Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to help you understand what's going on in the war in Ukraine. Each week, I do a weekly recap of the stories that are most important that day and the stories that maybe you missed along the way. So I'm going to go back to Sunday, the 21st. It is now Monday, the 29th of January as I'm going through this. I'm going Sunday to Sunday to show you what you missed. Okay, so the big story on Sunday the 21st was that Ukrainian drones hit a St. Petersburg gas terminal in Russia. And it's not just that they hit it, but that they continue to hit gas and oil refineries and things along these lines, and that they can hit as far as they can, and that they can't really be stopped as easily as you would think that Russia would be able to because the air support is just not everywhere. It's mostly in Ukraine and around, like, say, Moscow. So they're able to hit things with impunity. The story that you might not have seen or might not have connected was that DeSantis dropped out of the presidential race. This was Monday after the big election in Iowa, and he just realized he can't do it. He drops out. That leaves Nikki Haley and Trump as the only candidates left in the American presidential race. That American presidential race can be very important to Ukraine. Monday, 22nd of January, the big story was that Zelensky published a decree on historically Russian regions, and Russia absolutely went nuts about this. And what Zelensky did was he used Russia's logic against them and said, okay, well, Russia, if you're saying that we can expand the Ruski Mir and be in charge of Russians everywhere, well, here's what the Ukrainian mirror, if I can use that term, looks like. Well, here's what, historic Ukrainian lands look like, and we deserve these 5 or 6 oblasts that are actually in Russia because these are historical Ukrainian lands. It was absolutely brilliant. I did a video about that. You should watch that. It upended Putin's argument that even started with 2022's invasion. Zelensky, a story you might not have seen, was that he also proposed offering Ukrainian citizens to foreign volunteers, foreign fighters, as well as ethnic Ukrainians worldwide, like giving them dual citizenship in Ukraine. And that's something that could be significant to Ukraine moving forward. Okay, Tuesday, 23 January. The big story was that NATO signed a 1.1 billion euro contract for artillery ammunition, and they need to step it up and really get things there sooner than later. The story that you probably missed, unless you were paying really close attention, was that Putin was talking about launching the Year of the Family in Russia. This is one of the reasons that traditional conservatives tend to uncritically listen to what Putin talks about and then think, oh, well, they're like me. They're for family values. No, no, no. Here's what the year of the family is like. Here's Putin's, I'm going to quote now, Putin talking. The main purpose of the family is about having children, about procreation. Okay, that's fine so far. And thus the perpetuation of our people and centuries old history. No, wait a minute. So conservatives like in America, conservatives like me, aren't thinking about like I think family's good. I am very focused on my family, but it's not because I'm trying to perpetuate the citizenship of the United States. That's not it. Our culture, identity, national character are rooted in the family, and a person's family teaches and educates them, passes on traditions and knowledge, including professional experience, and he goes on. But his purpose for the family is not for the family, it's for the state, and that's very different. That's opposite of the way that conservatives in the United States think. State, keep your hands off my family. Wednesday, 24 January. The big story that day was that there was a Russian transport plane that crashes near Ukraine, near Belgorod, with more than 60 POWs allegedly on board. And I say allegedly on board because the plane shot down. And then Russia comes out and says, well, 65 of your POWs were on there. And it really threw the Ukrainian officials for quite a loop. Here are some headlines from Pravda, and these are the sub-stories, the headlines from Pravda and RT. Pravda, list of 65 Ukrainian POWs, including 12 Azov fighters, published. Pravda, Il-76 plane crash, all on board killed. Pravda, Ukraine commits stupid mistake by shooting down Russian Il-76. RT, 65 Ukrainian POWs killed in Russian plane crash, according to the Ministry of Defense. Now, it would come out later to not be true or not be provable, but it really jolted the Ukrainians. It was quite a psyop. Okay. Uh, Thursday, 25 January 2024. U.S. border policy within reach despite efforts by Trump to derail it, senators say. And Republicans are struggling to hold together Ukraine border deal. So they're getting close. In fact, a day or two later, I would see an article that was talking about they worked out all the policy issues. They're so close. All they're doing is fighting about the money at this point, and they almost have something together. Are they solving immigration totally? No, but they're getting together where they're working it out. And then Trump. So what Trump did was Trump was now agitating and saying, I don't want you to actually work out a deal because I want to have this to run on. 41% of New Hampshire voters actually thought that immigration was their top issue. And of those, 70 some odd percent went with Trump over Haley. So this was a pretty big thing. And Trump knows it and he wants to run on it, and he doesn't want to solve it because he wants to run on it. Okay, the story that you might not have seen is that Russian military VIPs were warned off boarding that downed plane, according to Ukraine. And the if that happened, that could have been amazingly bad for Russia had those VIPs been on board. Okay, Friday, 26 January 2024, Trump is in court for the E. Jean Carroll case. He's found guilty in a civil, not criminal, but civil suit. Those are two different things. Criminal means you go to jail. Civil means you may have to pay a fine to the person involved. So Trump is fined $83.3 million as being found guilty of disparaging E. Jean Carroll, and he was clearly disparaging her. But the fascinating thing about that was that there was this breakdown where if you, and I put this poll out on my YouTube channel, and you can go see it in my community tab. If you were a moderate, you think he's guilty by about 10 to 1, guilty to innocent by 10 to 1. If you are on the left side of the political spectrum, liberal or progressive, you think he's guilty by about 18 to 1. If you're a conservative like me, about 4 point something to 1, you think he's guilty. You still think he's guilty. It's just fewer percentage. There's more room for doubt in your mind. But if you were MAGA, you think he was innocent by about 2.5 to 1. That's what's going on with the mind of MAGA. So you ought to go see that poll for yourself. Now, there is some room for doubt here, and I don't mean that he wasn't disparaging, because he was disparaging. Now, out of that $83.3 million, $65 million of it was punitive. Now, if you think that it would have been the same result in Alabama as it was in Manhattan, then okay, you think the system is the system everywhere. But if you think it would have been different, there's a reason why people might have seen this as being unfair toward Trump. And those people that see it as unfair toward Trump, that are already MAGA more inclined, are more welded to Trump than ever, which is unfortunate. Now, I think it also chased away the independents. So in the general election, it'll be harder for Trump to be elected. But as far as making him the candidate in the primary, I don't think it makes that less likely. I think it makes it more likely, which is, I think, a fair read of what's happened. Okay, the story you might have missed that day when Trump took up all the air was that Germany unearths pro-Russia disinformation campaign with 50,000 bots that are pro-Russian on Twitter trying to seed pro-Russian narratives. Saturday, 27 January. So the big story there was that Ukraine said that it uncovered mass fraud in weapons procurement, and they're working that out, and the SBU has found out where it was going. They were supposed to create 100,000 mortar shells, and they never were created, but that money went to line the pockets of about 5 major folks within the defense ministry and the procurement agency in Lviv. What you might have missed, and they got the money back, by the way. So they've got that. They've caught one of the guys trying to cross the border, those kind of things. But it's a bad look, and it's going to be used for propaganda purposes, and it'll be repeated and repeated and repeated about how corrupt Ukraine is. What you might have missed was that the information war rages over the downing of the military plane. It was going back and forth. Ukraine said it had no evidence, finally, that there were dozens of POWs that died in the shot down plane. Now, they only apparently recovered 5 bodies, and that would have been consistent with the people that were flying the plane and the crew. But if you had 65 bodies, wouldn't they have shown them? Like, they have made some hay about this? And Putin called for a full investigation, but he did that with the Olavinka prison summer of 2022 as well, and nothing ever happened with that as well. Okay, last day, Sunday, 28 January, the big story that day was that Ukraine says that the corrupt officials that stole the $40 million meant to buy arms for the war were, here's what happened, here's how they were caught, here's how, like, everything was sorted out. You had the full story by this day. The story you might have missed was that um, attacks on the Russian enlistment offices in Russia have been pretty significant since the war began. There have been 220 attacks on Russian military enlistment offices since the beginning of the war in Ukraine in February of 2022. And that's fascinating that that happened in Russia, because in Russia, people have gone to jail for holding up a blank sign. So that these attacks were happening in the first place in Russia is pretty significant. All right, that's it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the shares and the subscribes. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.